The Battle of Ohio. The Browns versus the Bengals. The game that the Browns should win, but coming off of a disappointing loss to Pittsburgh, it is at question whether this team can bounce back and beat the Bengals. And the Bengals, coming off of a big, frankly dominating win over the New York Jets, are wondering if they can carry that momentum into Cleveland, Ohio, and beat the Browns. They certainly would love to after the Browns kind of danced on their grave last year, and the Browns would certainly hate to lose to a team that is 1-11 in a season that has already kind of been nightmarish for the Cleveland Browns. So what's going to happen this week? Who's going to have the edge? Let's talk about it. All right, we're going to start this thing like we always do. We're going to talk about some key matchups. And the first matchup that I'm kind of interested or storyline is, will the Browns offense recover from last week's hiccup? Last week, the Browns played what is the number 3 ranked defense in the NFL. So if they had a hiccup, it's understood that they had a hiccup against the number 3 defense in the NFL in their home stadium. That makes a lot of sense. But, it was a hiccup. And, they did look their best after playing the Dolphins, who is one of the worst defenses. But they get to play the Bengals, who in DVOA, cumulatively, is worse or are worse than the Miami Dolphins. I will say that the Bengals defense is getting healthier, and they are playing better as of late. But, it is still something to where it is a question of whether the Browns can wake up versus this defense. Now, I think that the way to get these guys is to, one, run the ball, particularly on the edges. The Bengals have not done great stopping the run on the edges, but also OBJ, Jarvis Landry have to get involved. The secondary has been awful at stopping the big play, and if the offensive line can block a little bit, then that's going to be a problem for the Bengals. The next question is, will the Browns be able to contain Carlos Dunlap? Last week, Carlos Dunlap had himself a mammoth of a game. He had 3 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss. To show you how big of a game that is, last week in Pittsburgh, the Browns' entire defensive line, the entire rotation, everybody on the defense, totaled 1 sack and 2 TFL. Yeah, Carlos Dunlap pretty much doubled the Browns' defensive line stats last week. So if he plays like that this week, it's going to be problems, because we've already seen the problems that Wyatt Teller has had at the guard position. But more importantly, we've seen the issues that our right tackle has had, Chris Hubbard. And, Greg Robinson looks like he's going to be back. He is more competent than just Jordan McCray, but, Chris Hubbard has been suspect this entire season. Last week, the Browns gave up 5 sacks, and this Bengals defensive line, despite this team being 1-11, this defensive line for the Bengals is absolutely no joke and nothing to be slighted against. So the Browns offensive line is going to be put to the test this week. Now, the third thing that I think going into this game that's very important that we stress is that Andy Dalton will kill you if you don't get a pass rush. And last week, the Browns got a negative amount of pass rush. So this week, they have to get a pass rush, because Andy Dalton is a far, far better quarterback than Duck Hodges. And Duck Hodges killed the Browns last week because the Browns refused to tackle the quarterback. And if that is the case this week, if the Browns can't get penetration, if the Browns can't slow down, not only is Andy Dalton going to hurt you, but Joe Mixon is going to hurt you. This offense that the Bengals have, if they can get protection up front, that's the only thing that's stopping them from being a much better offense than what the Pittsburgh Steelers have. So if you're the Browns, you have to be able to penetrate. You have to be able to get back there, or else you're going to get shredded. Now, there are some positives. Olivier Vernon's probably going to play more snaps, but he's been disappointing all season. So is Sheldon Richardson. So these are 2 players that are getting paid big money that you're going to need to step up. And if they can't step up, then the question is whether they have a long-term future here in Cleveland, because, I understand there's no Myles Garrett, but those 2 players are paid very well to step up in the absence of a Myles Garrett. And if they cannot do that, why are we paying them? And the fourth question is, can Nick Chubb get the edge on the Bengals? I'm just going to say this here. If Nick Chubb can consistently get the edge on the Bengals, Browns going to win this game by like 10 points at the very least, because Nick Chubb, when he can get the edge, he's dominant. There's no running back in the NFL. Dalvin Cook's pretty good when he gets the edge. So I don't want to say he's the only running back in the NFL, but him and Dalvin Cook are the only two running backs that if they get the edge, it's over. And they're bigger guys. And I know a lot of people are like, well, Nick Chubb's a big guy. He runs north-south. Not the case at all with Nick Chubb. If you look at his highlights, if you look at his best games, he is always running outside the hashes. That's where he's at his best. It's where he can get downfield. It's where he can break the most tackles. Look at his big run against the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to try to show it on screen. Hopefully I don't get copyright strike for this. But you see Nick Chubb gets the ball, bounces it out so he can get some momentum, and then cuts downfield, and then boom, he's gone. You know, he's almost unstoppable when he can consistently get that corner and go east to west because he's so big and he can move so fast once he gets his momentum going. And that's why the Browns don't run a lot of inside runs, because he's just, quite frankly, an average running back at that point when you run him a lot of inside. They did run him a lot of inside against the Steelers. Did not work out. And Kareem Hunt, again, not a great inside runner. The Browns don't really have options to run inside. But if they can get the edge, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, that's going to be a problem for the Cincinnati Bengals defense, who has struggled to stop running backs from getting the edge. All right, for inactives this week, I'm just gonna. It's too much. It's these injury reports are way too much now. It's getting to the end of the season. Browns have like 40 dudes on there. So what I'm gonna do is show you the complete injury report as it was posted. Eric Murray seems like he's gonna be coming back. For the Bengals, they seem to be getting healthier. No surprises really on either side. A lot of guys listed, but I think a lot of guys are going to end up playing. So I don't think that's a big deal. All right, so the biggest problem and weakness for each team. For the Cincinnati Bengals, they give up a lot of big plays, and they have struggled to slow down things at the secondary. Now, since Darqueze Dennard has come back, it's made a difference for the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think this is probably going to be one of the tougher wide receiving cores they're going to play all season. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against a Bengals secondary that has given up a ton of big plays. And I think Jarvis Landry is going to be the guy that the Browns should go to here a lot. Jarvis Landry, not only a great wide receiver just in the traditional sense, but also a very good yards after catch wide receiver. And I think that's where you're going to get the Bengals a lot. Bengals miss a lot of tackles in the secondary. I think there's going to be a lot of big play opportunities for Jarvis Landry. So get him the ball, let him run with it in open field. I think good things are going to happen. And for the Browns' biggest weakness is their offensive line. Their run blocking was awful last game, and that's why they couldn't run the ball consistently. And their pass blocking was awful last game, and that's why they couldn't move the ball down the field consistently without being set back or put behind a stick. It cost the Browns points and made the Browns punt when they could have kicked field goals. The offensive line last week was a complete disaster, and they're not out of it yet. I understand you're not playing TJ Watt and Bud Dupree this week, but Carlos Dunlap had himself a game last week. This Bengals defensive line is no joke. So this offensive line is going to have to put together a solid game to win this game. Now, they've been able to do that. Greg Robinson was out last week. I'll give him that. And he's coming back, so that might make a difference. But Chris Hubbard is still going to be out there, and Chris Hubbard was the biggest problem last week on the offensive lines. Him and Wyatt Teller. The right side of this offensive line has been a complete disappointment this entire season, and they need to play better in order for the Browns to win this game. If this offensive line does not play better, this game is not a layup. This game is not a give me. The Browns aren't good enough to get give me's. So they need to win this game, obviously, but they also need the offensive line to show up in order to win this game, or else they won't. If both lines don't show up, like both lines didn't show up in Pittsburgh, the Browns will not win this game. All right, so for the Bengals to win, I think it's pretty simple. They got to get Baker in the dirt 4 times. Getting pressure on Baker, slowing that whole thing down, taking him out of rhythm, that's really going to help the Bengals, and that's going to be able to allow them to get good field position too on the other side of the ball, because it's going to play great with field position. The next thing is score early. If the Bengals can get to 10 to 14 point lead on the Browns are in serious trouble, because they just have not been able to come back from those kind of margins this season. The offense seems to stall. They get predictable. And that is where a lot of the flaws in the coaching staff start to shine, is when this team is down a score or two They just seem to kind of get trapped and don't know what to do or make a lot of risky, questionable decisions at that point. Also, for the Bengals, they need to keep Landry and Odell under 100 yards. If they let Landry and Odell get loose for the big play, this game's going to be over because that means it's going to be a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt onslaught on top of that. That means it's going to be a whole offensive show for the Browns. So they can't let that happen. If that happens, then that's going to be trouble for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the next thing is that they need to have Carlos Dunlap have himself another 3-3 day. If he can get 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, the win probability for the Bengals is probably going to be very good for them. Now for the Browns, they need to return to the play action run game. The Browns have had success in this season with the play action pass. It kind of makes me wonder why they don't go back to it more often, but that hasn't been the case. But I would like them to go back to it, see what they can get off the play action pass. I really think it's going to be successful this week because you're playing against not great linebackers, and play actions generally work better on bad linebackers. The play action pass game should be deadly this week, especially how concerned the Bengals are going to be about Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And speaking of, the Browns have to get Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt involved early in this game. The same reason I don't want the Browns to go down a score or two, the same reason that the Bengals don't want the Browns to score on their first 1 or 2 possessions is because both these teams have good running backs. Joe Mixon for the Cincinnati Bengals, and of course, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt for the Cleveland Browns. If either team can just get settled in their offense and run the ball and hand the ball off to those guys, they're in a very good place. So whoever can get there first and whoever can get their run game going first is probably going to be the winner of this game. The next question is, this team has kind of proven they can stay away from the big mistakes that they had earlier in the season, but can they make the big plays that they need to? Denver and Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh were both 2 games where they didn't have a ton of penalties, but they just didn't make the big play. That can't happen this week. Andy Dalton will burn you if you don't make enough big plays. And if you don't make the plays that are there, you got to catch the interceptions. You got to corral the fumbles. You can't let big plays go to waste. So that is going to be an interesting one for the Browns. And the last one is you got to at least have a Carlos Dunlap day for your whole defensive line. You got to at least have 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss for the whole defensive line. Carlos Dunlap is one man, and he did more than that. So for the Browns defensive line, they should combine be able to do that. And if they don't, they won't win this game. It's really that simple. You're not going to beat the Bengals, no matter how bad they are, with bad offensive and defensive line play for the Cleveland Browns, because those are the kind of things that can destroy a talented team from the inside out. So we're going to do win-loss prediction for this week, and I think the score is going to be 36-31 Cleveland. I think the Browns are going to eke this out. I think people aren't going to be happy with how close this game is, but I don't think that this defense is going to be ready to get enough pressure on the quarterback, Andy Dalton, in order to keep this score lower than that. So I do think the Browns offense is going to have a good day, but I do think the Browns defense is also going to struggle. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. Do you think the Browns are going to win? Do you think the Bengals are going to win? Or do you think this is going to be a easy win or a tough win? Let me know in the comment section down below. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.